Auzubillahiminashaitanirrajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum to my brothers and sisters in faith, and peace be on my brothers and sisters in humanity, whether you're in Geneva, where this GMD is being held, or joining us online. The commemoration of GMD was initiated by the Islamic Human Rights Commission, or IHRC, in London 14 years ago, and was done so that we could eradicate genocide and genocidal acts and the culture that could lead up to genocide from the narratives of our world. Unfortunately, the unfolding hatred across Europe, as well as the already highlighted areas of Myanmar and Yemen, and the rise of the Hindutva in India, are testimony to the need for GMD. The theme of this year's Genocide Memorial Day is focused on the tools of genocide, otherization and demonization of communities. This theme will be addressed by our esteemed speakers, who we are honored to have to discuss these issues at length. I'm going to talk a little bit about the genesis of GMD. Genocide Memorial Day is a day focused on remembering man's inhumanity to man. It takes place in January each year. For the GMD project, the act of remembrance is not limited by the background of either the victims or the perpetrators of any of the genocides. It aims to raise awareness of genocide in order for new generations to understand the causes and recognize the warning signs of such atrocities. Imam Ahmed Qasim's inaugural lecture for GMD in 2010 outlines the 8 steps to genocide. The third Sunday of January was chosen as the date for the event in 2010 to commemorate the approximate 1-year anniversary of the end of Operation Cast Lead, an example of ongoing genocidal acts in the current age. For the youngsters in our audience, Operation Cast Lead was when the Tel Aviv regime committed a genocidal act against the Palestinian people in Gaza. IHRC hopes this project will help develop a culture where the burden of responsibility of the verse, "Whoever kills a soul, it is as if he had slain mankind entirely," the Quran, chapter 5, verse 32, becomes a norm for all humanity to internalize, rather than just an ideal for theoretical discussion. The philosophy of this project by the IHRC rejects the notion that there is a hierarchy of victim depending on their background. By highlighting the people and power structures who have perpetrated genocides or genocidal acts, we want to hold the perpetrators to account within the framework of GMD, as well as remember the victims of these genocides and genocidal acts. While the idea of this commemoration is firmly rooted in Islamic thinking, this commemoration is an inclusive event which encourages people of all faiths or none from all parts of the world to take part. The IHRC list of genocides is not exhaustive, and as resources have permitted us over the years, we have added to this list depending on where the research has taken us. Other organizations, faith and non-faith from around the world who have been inspired by the idea of GMD have held their own GMDs in different cities from around the world, including Amsterdam, Paris, Brussels, Kuala Lumpur, and Jerusalem. I will repeat something that I've said before on the occasion of GMD, which is that it is notable that countries like Britain and America that committed some of those genocides in yesteryear are prepared to remember other genocides that they weren't as involved in because it suits their current political interests. By trying to forget the genocides that they themselves committed, they're continuing the act of genocide of yesteryear by trampling on the memories of those killed and basically committing what has been termed as memoricide in a previous GMD. It is also clear that by giving more prominence to one genocide in their remembrance, they're using it as a tool to create a hierarchy of victim. When we partake in events like GMD, we need to discern the purpose of the event that we are taking part in. We need to look at the stated aims and objectives and scrutinize them to see if they stack up. We need to actually try and see if the actions of the countries that hold these memorial days or memorial services are done with a view to stop further genocides, or are these memorial days and memorial services being promoted to create a culture where carrying out future genocides becomes easier because we have, in our attempt to remember the dead, not taken into account how these memorial days and memorial services become instrumentalized to actually push another agenda. One of the issues that I've pointed out is that some state policies encourage the remembering of genocides. What is curious is that the genocide that they want us to focus on is not the one that their predecessors have committed. The question is that why is this not done? Why are our children in our schools and educational spaces not encouraged to challenge that narrative? I'll give you an example from the context of the UK. There are many genocides and genocidal acts to choose from in different parts of the world. Here's a real chance for the UK government and the Department for Education here to truly celebrate, or rather I should say commemorate, the diverse groups of people that it can encourage our systems and schools to remember because of who their predecessors have exterminated in previous centuries, whether we're talking about the Malays, Chinese, Indian subcontinent, Iranians, Iraqis, Kenyans, Nigerians, South Africans, the Irish, the transatlantic slave trade, and I'm sure there are many that I've missed out that have been the victims of British genocidal policies over the last 500 years. So why is it that when we have such a diverse range of genocides to choose from, the British government bodies encourage focus on a genocide that has been perpetrated by another European country? The government loves to pump out words like diversity and plurality, but in this case that same mantra is not applied. From this, we need to understand that words like these are tools that are used selectively to fulfill an agenda and to oppress where required. We also need to understand that the sad reality is that remembrances in general and remembrances of genocides and such words are sadly used as tools to further particular agendas of the government. And we need to challenge that. Our responsibility as human beings is to all human beings that have been oppressed, and not the narrow confines of the nation states or narrow tribal loyalties. The Islamic perspective clearly spells out that our Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is a blessing for mankind. In other words, that he's not just there for Muslims. As a Muslim, my responsibility, therefore, is to the oppressed of the world, regardless of their background. Over the years, we've had many different types of genocides being discussed to highlight the variety of people that have been exterminated over the centuries. The context of our oppressed brothers and sisters may have been different, but the genocidal experience has highlighted that the steps that lead to genocide, the environment of hate that needs to be created for there to be no challenges to the ultimate act of extermination. Some people in governments around the world have understood the genocidal tendencies of Western powers that start with demonization and otherization of particular groups and then move towards oppression, killing before all-out genocide. Some have resisted that oppression and continue to do so and stop this happening. And we need to honor that military resistance against attempted genocide. IHRC started Genocide Memorial Day to challenge this creation of the hierarchy of victim, as well as to say to the powers of the world that we are going to hold this event on the anniversary of the end of Operation Cast Lead, which was a genocidal act that was committed by the Tel Aviv regime against the Palestinian people. It is not enough to commemorate past genocides if you're still prepared to get involved with genocidal acts today. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll hand you back over, and I hope, I'm sure our esteemed speakers will provide a great deal of information from the perspectives that they're talking, and I look forward to listening to those.
Extremism. Now, they currently work in a family of organizations, and I'm going to talk a little bit about this family of organizations, as you can see on the screen. So this family of organizations is not just one organization, it's a few organizations working together. You've got the VHP, which is the Vishwa Hindu Prashad. You've got the BJP, which is the political wing. You've got the Seva Parta, which is the kind of paramilitary. I don't know if it's. Oh, sorry. I need to click it myself. Sorry, that is this slide here shows the family or the branches of this Hindutva, and in itself, the BJP. The political wing, you've got the VHP, which is also like a socialist wing. You've got within this humanitarian groups like the Seva Partiya, who are international. They're out throughout the world at the moment. And the RSS is the kind of, I'd say, the center point of all these organizations. They're the ones that oversee, they're the paramilitary. And the western wing of the RSS is known as the HSS, the Hindu Swamayik Sangh. Now, these organizations, they work both overtly and covertly with each other to promote the Hindu Rashtra, which is the Hindu nationalist Soj, or the idea. So minorities. According to the National Commission of Minorities Act 1992, India recognizes 6 minorities. And from these 6 minorities, they recognize the Muslims, Christians, Jains, Buddhists, Parsis, and Sikhs as a minority within India, according to their constitution. Now, why am I talking about minorities? Because the minorities in India are currently the ones that are facing the brunt of the Hindu Rashtra. They are the ones that are being prosecuted. They are the ones that are facing, I would call, an overt or a covert genocide. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. So within these minorities, there's another sect that India doesn't recognize as a minority, but I do, which is called the scheduled caste. So the scheduled caste are a part of the India system of being the very low caste. So those of you that don't know, India has believes in something called a caste system, which is like a social hierarchy system. And within that, the Brahman is right at the top, which is protected by a section called Kshatris, which are the warriors, which underneath is the Vaishnus, the working class, and underneath them is the untouchables, the Shudras, also known as the Dalits, also known as the scheduled caste at the moment. And they make around 16.6% of India. Now, because by religion they're Hindu and they fall under the Hindu bracket, they don't get recognized as a scheduled caste. But they are facing a lot of the atrocities because of the Brahmanic Soj that's coming within India at the moment. So, minorities, just to give a few facts and figures. So, in 2018, the Religious Hate Crimes, the NGO, put a statistic out saying that 75% of the hate crimes within India, what were religiously motivated or were hate crimes, were faced by minorities. So the minorities where a religion was known, they faced 75% of the hate crimes within India. And that has skyrocketed since the BJP has come into power. So firstly, I'm not going to talk about all the minorities in the interest of time. I'm going to talk about the Muslims, the Christians, the Sikhs, and the scheduled caste. So I'll talk about four of the minorities and the atrocities they're facing. So Muslims in India at the moment are around 200 million. So they're about roughly 12 to 13% of the India's population. And in terms of in itself, Muslims in India have faced huge amounts of communal violence, riots, massacres across India. So within that, I mean, I can't go through every single one of them, but just to kind of give you an understanding, from 1954 to 1982, there was 7,000 cases of communal violence against Muslims. In 1969, the Gujarat riots equated for 430 people losing their lives. Equally, in 1985, 200 people lost their lives. And in 2002, the one's most famous because Prime Minister Modi was the the chief minister of Gujarat at that time, where 2,000 Muslims lost their lives. So within these, you can see many, many atrocities from the partition or the independence of India to current time. But I'm going to focus on one key pivotal point within that, which is the the kind of demolish or the topic of the Barbary Mosque. Now, the Barbary Masjid was basically it was created or made at a time, built at a time where Babur was in rule, which was actually in 1528. And the Barbary Masjid was apparently, according to Hindu scholars, was built over the Ram Mandir, which was the location where Ram was either born or the deity had some kind of special occurrence there. Now, within that, what happened was there was many ministers, many people that used this as a pivotal or a topic point to create this buzz around Hindutva and Hindu Rashtra. So this was kind of the pivotal or the topic they needed to gather the troops and to kind of make their mark on kind of raising the Hindutva. So I'm going to give you a few images on the screen, and these images are of politicians that use the Barbary Masjid claim, you know, using the organizations that I showed, the kind of branches of organizations, and they came to power because of this actual, I'd say, incident. So on screen, you see a few different color rings. So the green ring is of an individual called Advani. Advani was basically, he was at one point the deputy prime minister of India, also the minister of Home Affairs. And he's actually the co-founder of BJP. Now, BJP being this really right-wing Hindutva organization that has the Hindu ideology, which is in power at the moment. And in red, you can see is our current prime minister, well, not our current prime minister, the prime minister of India, Narendra Modi. And Amit Shah, also the minister of Home Affairs, is clearly seen. Now, the first image you can see with the speaker was the yatra. The yatra mean the journey to the Babri Masjid. So what they did was they did this 100-day trek to the masjid where they gathered troops, and many of the states that they went to, there was communal violence, there was riots, there was killing, because they were inciting this hatred that we're going to go to Babri, we're going to take over the masjid, and we're going to make it a mandir again. And that you can see Modi holding the mic and Advani speaking. And clearly you can see that Amit Shah, the Minister of Home Affairs, is the second image you can see is also of that yatra getting to the Babri Masjid. And you can see on the top right-hand side, Amit Shah is holding, and this is very recently, the new kind of construction, because they actually demolished the the Babri Masjid in the end in 1992, and now they've finally come to a point where they're constructing the Ram Mandir. So you can see clearly all these people and how they affiliated with that network of the VHP. So the VHP was the ones that led the movement to destruction of the mosque, but it was the BJP that were facilitating and helping them, as well as the RSS and as well as Shiv Sena, Bajrang Dal, many of these organizations coming together. And you can see the person that I've highlighted in yellow in the bottom right-hand corner, his name is Mohan Bhagwant. He's the current leader of the RSS. Now, that image you can see where Modi in red is sitting and Mohan Bhagwant is sitting there is actually of 2020, where they laid the foundation for the Ram Mandir, which was where the Babri Mosque was. So, again, you can see the kind of Hindutva mentality of the RSS and how they're all interlinked, where Amit Shah is again sitting with Mohan Bhagwant. You can see the uniform and the kind of fascist, really inward, you could say, insular, self-serving Hindu Rashtra Soch that promotes within the RSS. Now, I haven't got enough time to talk about what the RSS is and how it kind of really closely ties with the Nazi fascist movement and what they're trying to promote within India. But one of the things that they bought in, which was because, you know, due to that, I'd say, gradual incline of them coming into power, they bought in sudden change of certain rules. Now, these rules that they came up, which was the Citizenship Amendment Act, which was, you know, those of you that don't know, which was anyone from 2015 that had come into the country from neighboring countries like Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Pakistan, they were allowed to become a citizen of India. And all religions and minorities were mentioned within the act other than Islam. So anyone that was a Muslim that came into the country prior to 2015, possibly lost their citizenship. Another one was the anti-conversion. So the anti-conversion I'm going to speak about later on, but the Article 370, we all know Kashmir, the special status was removed. Why Kashmir? Because it's the most densely populated area of Muslims in India. And the hijab ban in Karnataka, so which was basically by the actual ministers at the time says that hijab is actually a non-essential of Islam. You don't need to wear hijab in school. And because of all this, a lot of hatred and a lot of riling and a lot of propaganda against Islam was brought into this. Now, coming to the anti-conversion law, the anti-conversion law is a state-level status. 8 of the 29 states have taken upon this law where you can't convert or you can't change religion easily. And no surprise to you guys, the states where there is at the 8 of the 29 states are usually BJP-led states where you can't openly convert. And one of the kind of coming back to the pictures, the people I want to talk about is the state where the most hatred for Muslim is being fueled at the moment is by this. I would say, after I had a conversation with Jawad and we were talking about Yogi Adityanath, I'd say Yogi Adityanath is the physical embodiment of Hindutva. If you think of what Hindutva is, just think about Yogi Adityanath. He has made statements that would absolutely shock you on a world level. Talking about taking Muslim women out of their graves and raping them. Talked about a policy called Love Jihad, where they promoted the killing of many Muslims in genocide. And out of all the atrocities that have happened in the last year or so that I'm going to talk about here, most of them have happened from Uttar Pradesh, where he is the chief minister. So you can see the kind of the ties in itself of how this person and all these people are interlinked, whether that's Advani, whether that's Modi, whether that's Mohan Bhagwant, whether that's Amit Shah, and how they are all working to promote that Hindu Rashtra. Now, there has been many atrocities. Just in 2022 alone, I couldn't go, there was not enough time to talk about how many people have been lynched for, there's this special police now called the cow police. So within India, if you are seen to have a cow in the back of your truck, you might be taking it to the slaughterhouse. There is the special laws that allow the cow police, which is just individuals and vigilantes, stopping a car and lynching. And people have died in the last 5 years just being stoned and killed for having a cow in the back of their truck. So that ideology is creeping through. Next, I want to talk about Christianity. So Christianity is 2.3%. It's a tiny minority within India. And it's facing many atrocities. It has faced many atrocities. Kind of just an idea of the kind of atrocities that Christians have faced: arson of churches, rapes, murders, many. But some of them being in 1997, on Christmas Day, 22 churches were burned. 1998, 20 churches were burned. In 1999, 157 houses were set on fire and churches. The National Commission of Minorities released a report. The report was also released within the Amnesty International report last year, which I was reading earlier. It talks about how most of the atrocities to the minorities, including the Christians, happen in those states which are led by BJP rule. In 2007, there was 57 deaths and 100 churches burnt. Over the last 10, 20 years since 2012, there's been 450 charities from the Christian charities that have been stopped or banned within India so that they don't promote Christianity in the country. So in itself, the last year was one of the record high years, according to the United Christian Front, which is an NGO. Talks about the largest number of kind of Christian hate that's happened within a country. And you won't guess the largest number of crimes that were reported in that year, 2022, which were from which state? The Uttar Pradesh, which is where Yogi Adityanath, the embodiment of Hindutva, is the ruler of. Scheduled caste. So scheduled caste, again, I just spoke about how they are already treated. Now, there is places within India where a scheduled caste, a person of a low caste, doesn't have the rights of a person of higher caste. Now, some of these rights, if you start listening to what the rights are, historically, if a scheduled caste person listened to the Gita or tried to read the Gita, they would pour lead into their ears. It was legal until very recently, and some places it is still legal, for someone of a Brahmin to rape a Shudra woman. And this is the kind of, the minority of the scheduled caste are known as the untouchables. Now, the kind of atrocities they're facing, there's been many atrocities that they've faced over the years. And not going into the details of, in interest of the time, again, you could spend, on each one of these atrocities, you could spend an hour on each topic. But understanding how the tribal people or the scheduled caste are treated within India is to understand how most of them are the ones that are in prison, most of them are the ones that are abused sexually. And just going on to this statistic here, since the BJP has come into power, and this is a statistic that's from the Scheduled Tribes Prevention Act, you could just see how, since the BJP has come into power, how the atrocities have increased and how the sexual assaults and the rapes of Dalit women have increased. In a modern era and a time where we're thinking we're moving forwards, you wouldn't think something like rape would be increasing. But India is actually known as the rape capital of the world. Everyone knows about the Delhi rape case, which is against of someone of a lower caste. So moving on from that, speaking about this one case that I was reading about, which is this boy called Indra Megwal. He was a boy of a low caste. He was in school and he went and he was thirsty, he touched the water pot of a higher caste teacher and he was killed. He was beaten to death for that. Now his father took him to 6 hospitals across 21 days. This was last year, July the 6th last year. This is not old news. This is not 50, 100 years ago. This is last year, July. A boy of a lower caste touched the water pot of a higher caste and he was beaten to death and killed. So you can see the atrocities are happening till today. So the last minority I'm going to talk about is the Sikh faith, and I could speak till time's end on this, but I want to speak a little bit about the kind of genocide or the kind of discrimination the Sikhs have faced. The Sikhs, whenever you think of a Sikh faith, you think, the Indian. Sikhs are only 1.7% of India. The population is tiny, absolutely small. And within that, I think one of the most persecuted people within India are the Sikhs. So they had to fight for their rights. Even till today, believe it or not, there is no such thing as Sikh according to the Indian constitution. Sikhs are recognized as long-haired Hindus. Up until last year, there was no such thing as a Sikh marriage. So Sikhs were only, the Sikhs that were married, it was recognized as a Hindu marriage act. So there's many kind of discriminations, or there's an identity crisis for the Sikh people. But the kind of most prominent attack was the holiest place of the Sikhs, which is known as the Golden Temple, Harmandir Sahib, was attacked by the Indian army, killing thousands. Now, the statistics from my research, there's been, at least in the last 30 years, 200,000 killings of Sikhs within Punjab, which is huge, absolutely huge. The massacres that have happened in the kind of, I'd say, the media blackout and the genocide or the military control that's happening in Kashmir at the moment was in Punjab for the last 30 years. So Punjab itself is facing many atrocities, and it's done in an overt and a covert way. So Punjab itself, the land of 5 rivers, doesn't have 5 rivers anywhere. 75% of Punjab's water has been diverted to other states. So Punjab is now saying that it's going to become a desert in 20 to 25 years. It's against international riparian law. It's illegal. It's caused many health issues throughout Punjab. Punjab is the highest in terms of heart disease. It's the highest in terms of blood pressure, highest in terms of hepatitis C. There's countless issues throughout Punjab. And kind of talking a little bit about Punjab. Now, I want to show this next statistic, as I want everyone to focus. If anything you focus on this. Those areas where Hindi is spoken within India and fertility rates. So we're a research-based organization, us Saving Punjab, and our researchers are currently looking at secondary data. And these 2 sets of data I'm going to show you is data from the government. This is not my data. This is states where Hindi is spoken and states where fertility rates are low or high. Now, when I show you the image, the red area is the area where fertility rates are high, and the blue area is rates where fertility rates are low. Now, you tell me, is there no cross-correlation between the two states? So where there's area of Hindi is spoken, the fertility rates are high, and areas where there's been some kind of separatist movements, where there's been some kind of agitation, or there has been some kind of fight for their independence, the fertility rates are low. So it shows that there is this programming, the tools of genocide have been used within that in an overt and a covert way. Why? By, infertility rates dropping, by health problems, by drugs in the state. Again, so if you think about Punjab is a tiny, tiny area. You can see it in the north of at the top there. It's a 1.53 geographical area of India. It's tiny. From 2011 to 2014, there was around 13,000 tons of drugs found in the whole of India. 13,000 tons. And 55% of them drugs were found from Punjab. Why? Because the borders have been open so that drugs come into Punjab. The youth, this is a report done by the Guru Nanak Dev Ji University report of Punjab, that says that around 73% of Punjab's youth are addicted to some kind of drugs. Why? Because there was an agitation, there was a separatist, there was a movement of independence, and they've done the same to Kashmir, they've done the same to Assam, same to places of Tamil Nadu, which is having huge issues with the alcohol problems, and various other studies throughout Punjab. So just to kind of conclude, Punjab, the Sikhs, the Christians, the Muslims, the scheduled caste are facing atrocities throughout India at the moment, and Hindutva is on the rise, spilling into the diaspora. Just last year, if you guys remember, in Leicester, UK, England, there was communal violence where Hindutva came out onto the streets to make a stand. And that was that Hindu Rashtra, the ideology, and they were all members of the HSS, which is the West, the right wing of the RSS. And it's spilling out. And we want to, and my kind of purpose of saying this today is, according to the Article 18, everyone has the right to the religion freedom. India is not exercising that. In fact, I would go even further saying, wherever there's a human right, India is violating. India has violated every single section, whether it's to do with language. 750 languages have disappeared in India, according to UNESCO. 750 languages. Punjabi is one of them, because it's a tertiary language within its own state at the moment. Whether it's to do with human rights, whether it's to do with resources of humanitarian, so you're talking about water, riparian law, illegal in terms of the riparian law of international court. So Punjab has been affected. I can see it just from the Punjab story of our research that India has actually violated every single human right that the people in the civilization of India have. So India should be accountable for their actions. So that is the end of my talk. I hope you guys, I think I was within the time, hopefully. Yeah.
10 minutes ago.
Oh, sorry, I'm really sorry. Apologies for that, so guys.
Okay, 5 minutes for the question answer. Please keep the questions brief, and I request that you keep the answers brief as well. Anyone has any questions? Okay.
Please be.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. For someone who is naive to India's culture and history and sociology, where does this hatred stems from? And what can we do to solve this issue?
Personally, I think the hatred stems from the British colony coming over. It was the divide and conquer. Before the British invaded and it became the colonial, India and Pakistan were one. And they created the Radcliffe Line and caused the issue, pointing at the issue being Pakistan, and Pakistan being an Islamic state, India being majority Hindu. So the enemy was Pakistan. So the enemy within India is Muslims, or anyone that wants to be separate from India or against the Indian constitution. India in itself, personally, is a myth. For me, 29 states that have unified in India, there's so much diversity there that you can't paint them all with the same brush. There's so many languages, so many cultures, so many walks of life. It's so diverse that you can't paint them all as saying India, it should recognize and celebrate that it's secular and that it has differences. but it doesn't. It wants to promote and paint everyone with the same brush that we are Hindu Rashtra. And you've heard the word Hindustan before, but Hindustan is the land of Hindus, whereas India itself, the 29 states, is diverse and it should stay diverse. And if they want a Hindu Rashtra, then have the Hindu Rashtra, but let everyone else have their own autonomy as well. If Tamil Nadu want to be independent, let them be independent. If Kashmir wants to be independent, let them be independent. So I think the problem lies with, if you want to push the Hindu Rashtra and say there needs to be a nation of Hindus, then there can be, but then let everyone else live and have self-determination.
Any more questions?
Do you see any hope with Rahul Gandhi's Bharat Jodo march?
I have no faith in the Indian system. The Congress party, what Rahul is actually promoting at the moment, were the kind of ones that attacked the holy shrine of the Sikhs, and it was his grandmother that did that. And the ethos of the Congress party, for me, there is no such thing as BJP, there is no such thing as Congress, there's no such thing as Aam Aadmi Party. All these political parties are just fronts. The government is run by a kind of elite Brahmanic system that rules India, and they will always rule it, whether it's through the intelligence agencies and them promoting their ethos of Hindu Rashtra. So the Rahul Gandhi is just a front, just like any other political of any country. I have no faith in the Indian system. I think the only way forward within that is for us to be allowed to be self-determined. If self-determination is a human right, then you can't unify and make everyone, like I said, paint everyone with the same brush. You can't do that.
So is there any hope?
There is hope. The hope is the fact that I'm sitting here right now and we're talking about this. For me, that's a way forward for the next generation to now highlight the atrocities and make sure that genocide is prevented, and the tools of genocide that are being used in India at the moment is highlighted throughout the whole world, and they understand that we should prevent, because I fully believe, especially with the ban of the hijab, how they are, the way they're going about, with the anti-Muslim laws. Muslim genocide in India can happen overnight. Really, if you see how, India is going at the moment, especially with what they did with the farmers' protests over the last years, they just let them sleep on the roads for a year, and how their system within itself is very insular, very self-serving, very inward thinking of, we just want to serve our own and protect our own. Just to give an example, there's political prisoners in jail at the moment that have been in jail for the last 30 years. And they are they're Sikh prisoners, and there's currently a protest going on at the moment for these Sikh prisoners. And people, their crime was to prevent genocide. They killed people that were causing genocide in Punjab at that time, these high kind of officers. And they have served 30 years in jails. Now the killers of one of the Gandhis has been let out with serving less time. So anyone that serves, the agenda is okay to be let out, but anyone that is, it with the UAPA laws and the TADA that was previously in, what they're doing in Kashmir. There's people in jail at the moment in Punjab for just possessing material of having an independent Sikh state. And they've been in jail for the last 8 years for just possessing material. And in another, if you had a material that was promoting a Hindu Rashtra, there's no, I'd say, any prosecution towards them. So within India at the moment, the system's corrupt. The only way forward for me is for India to allow those states that want to be self-determined, like Kashmir, like Punjab, like other places, to have their own autonomy.
Okay, I'll just take one more question from the back, and then we go to the next panelist.
Thank you for all your explanations and answers. It's just a brief question that why is this movement gaining popularity despite genocide against so many minorities, not just Muslims, but other minorities, as you mentioned. Why Hindutva is gaining so much popularity in India?
My only answer to the reason it's gaining popularity is, I think the way BJP came into power was they had an enemy, and the enemy was Pakistan. Whether it was Balakot, whether it was, the fighter jet that was dropped, or, all these, for them, they famed to come into power was the common enemy, which is Pakistan. And the reason now, they did things like take out the Citizenship Amendment Act, they did the Article 370, and these were ways that have been, this programming has taken 70 years through movies, through literature, through school books, that, we are better off as a Hindu, nation, inward thinking, where Pakistan is the enemy. And that is done through media channels, through news. So it gains popularity because the seeds being planted over many years through movies, through kind of, making them understand that this is actually what India is. And then it's watered by BJP coming out and destroying the Babri Masjid and coming out and saying we will attack Pakistan, or coming out and saying that we will remove Article 370. And then eventually people will see what they thought was an ideology come into existence, it becomes, for them, popular. Just like at the moment, if something is happening in the world, as long as for them it's something that they would see as an ideology that was once promoted and now it's coming to flourish, for them it becomes popular.
I think there was one person who wanted to ask a question in the front. No? Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Gurpreet. That was a very
Thank you very much.
Interesting, and we learned a lot. Now I would like to ask Rania if you can come on stage.
Well, first of all, I like to thank, of course, the other participants, and also today is the weekend, and I saw that there is so many people. I'm so happy and very proud to be among the first two speakers, in which I think the former speaker, he could just change the name, put instead of India, Palestine, then it's the same. Because in fact, we have the same colonization. So always when I speak in any conference, always we have to speak about the differences between the French colonization and the British colonization, especially in our region. In fact, to be honest, okay, I speak better French and German than English, but I prepare my intervention in English, so I will continue like that. So please be tolerant if I pronounce bad some words. In fact, honestly speaking, because he presents me, after 17 years working with the Swiss government, in a public law, and then suddenly I decided to change the line and to study international law. So I left everything. Everybody thinks that I'm crazy, and I start a new issue. Why? The public law was just to be stable somewhere, to get the nationality. Then I could really work more globally than just for Swiss law. So in fact, I'm here not on behalf of the organization where I work, which is international organization, but I'm in behalf of one organization created in Britain, as well in Sweden, which is called Law for Palestine. It's young lawyers, because I believe, the same as you said, that the new generations, they are the one that we hope, of course. This is why we have to keep or to leave our experience to them to make it easier, because now with the new technology, I think many things became much easier for them. So I will bring the issue of Palestine and the suffering of the minority in Palestine. And just quickly to understand the issue, in fact, the minority in Palestine, they are the one who considered live under what's called, I will say, racist, the state of Israel, because I can't say the state of Israel alone. So they are the one who, let's say, they didn't leave the country, or they faced a lot of problems, but they remain in the land, and after the war, 1948. So we understand that when the British mandate was over, they deliver Palestine, the same as you mentioned. The land for them, it's a land without people, for a people without land. But of course, we know that the population were there in that time. But of course, it was a colonial project in order really to implement the Israelis, especially the Jewish in that time, because it doesn't exist, the state of Israel, in order, because they felt bad after what's happened, the Nazi, so after the Holocaust. So they want okay, we will gather all the Jewish, or we will give them this land to gather themselves, and of course to create their land, and they forget completely that there is a population living there in that time. So this is just to give you an idea before I go through the main subject that we support. So in fact, during decades, the minority suffered and still suffering until now. And I remember my first interest to study really what's the differences between minority and indigenous people. It came in 1990. First of all, it was in fact in 76, when there is a big uprising in Palestine, which is occupied by Israel. I mean, which came now, the state of Israel. And it's called the land lay, because in fact, the Israeli, they want to confiscate some land belongs to Arabs. But they put it between brackets Arab, but they are Palestinians, because now this is how they call them, the Arab in Israel. So they and many people were killed, etc. And I was in the school, and I heard people speaking the newspapers that if any changes will happen, it should come from the ground. And I totally agree, but in the ground with the help of the outside. So this is why, until now, with my age, since 76, I believe that if we want really to bring justice to the Palestinian people, it should start from the Palestinians who live in what's called Israeli state. So now you will see why I'm talking about that. So, okay, I start to work with the government. I had some money. Then I decided to quit all that. And I went to visit, in that time, it's over Pinochet regime in Chile. And I learned that there is a very important minority which is called the Mapuche. So I went there to understand the criteria. How could I consider this is indigenous or minority? And of course, because of Palestine, because what we called who live in Israel minority, but what about the others? But they are also the indigenous. They are the one who born there, who lived there, etc. How it suddenly they became the minority? So in fact, for me, I want to understand that. And then, okay, I understand the criteria from Chile. Then I went directly to Mexico, because we heard that many farmers have been killed. Why? Because they are Zapatistas. Then I said, I have to understand what's this movement, which is really farmers want to protect their land. And then I went with the Zapatistas in Mexico, and I learned a lot. And then suddenly we heard that the apartheid system is over in South Africa, then quickly going to South Africa to live with the Afrikaner to understand another criteria. So why I was obliged to bring you this, to travel with me, because in fact, each step was important for something could come in the future. So this is how I saw my objective. It's not just traveling, traveling costs money, and I was student, etc. And also, of course, I noticed how much when I present myself, in that time I was studying Spanish, when I say from Palestine, everybody come like I'm coming from the sky. It's they never met any Palestinians, because I wasn't really in the capitals. I live with the people where they have their own language, So I learned the language of the, just using my hands, etc. Of course, I learned some words, but it wasn't enough. So in one in one part, I bring the issue of Palestine to these people. You know, they became solidarity, and also I learned a lot from them. So it was very important for me because I live in Switzerland, where is the United Nations. So my objective was, in fact, to bring the language, our language, the Palestinian voices, to the United Nations in order to disturb. It's not just to read a statement. It's, in fact, to speak with governments, with states, and they should feel responsible about what's happening. And this was my question, if I had the right to speak, that how it comes, and I still believe, in fact, that the people who are abroad, like in the Indian, in the UK or others, who believe about the rights of their people, they should work hardly, you know, and they should bring the culture, and they should explain the story, the historical background of their, let's say, grandparents or the family, in order to continue. This is what will disturb, in fact, this new system of colonization. The colonization in the past is different than now. Now it's more economic, by the way. I will explain you more later. I'm sorry if I go out from the subject, because some issues were mentioned, so I should avoid repeating them. So, in fact, when the world starts to bring the issue genocide, it's just after, in fact, after the Nazi, and then, which led to Holocaust, then they raised the issue. Otherwise, before, unfortunately, because the United Nations Declaration, it came in 92. And if I want to remind you about the Armenian genocide, it was in 1920, which is during the World War I. So can you imagine how many years, 70 years, until the UN really works and we have this, let's say, the UN declaration. And so it was really very, very, let's say, yeah, it's a shame for the international community that they wait 70 years until, they put this declaration in order to force states, in fact, to feel responsible when it comes to minorities who live in their countries. Because some minorities, they became because their land were colonized. Others, because they were forced displaced, etc. So there is many tools, in fact, used in the past. So now, if I want to bring the issue of Palestine after the 1948, when the international community created the State of Israel and it became recognized, the Arabs were really, they were mostly either colonized or they agreed to put their hands with this, what's called the international community, and everybody agreed, and the Palestinian refugees were spread everywhere. And I want to remind you, even now, with this Ukrainian war, with the Iraqi, Syrian, Yemeni, whatever, still the third of the whole refugees in the world are Palestinians. Because I want just quickly to tell you, can you imagine a Palestinian who were forced to leave their country and they were near near Palestine, let's say in Syria, and then there is a war in Syria, then they have to leave, and then in Iraq, then there is a war in Iraq, they have to leave. So you can imagine how many times you became refugees, like 3 times. And now my work with this international organization for migration, I met some refugees who were left from Palestine, then they were in Iraq, then the war in Iraq, then they found themselves in Syria, then the war in Syria started, then they found themselves in Jordan, then they left to Yemen, and now there is a war in Yemen. Can you imagine just a grandmother, she lived all these really, 5 countries and she's still alive. Can you imagine what's mean that? So always in my interventions in the universities, I said, I still really optimistic because my mother is older than the State of Israel. My mother is 80 years old, but the State of Israel is aged 75. And honestly, we have a very important example in the history. Algeria was colonized 130 years, and now Algeria is independent state. Okay, there is still issues to raise, but at least it's become independent, well-known state. So for me, we have to educate the generations. We have to, to keep their voices loud in order really to disturb, because the international community will not continue really, let's say, they don't want to hear the voices of the new generations. No. I saw myself when I discussed with the EU representative, and I remind him about the conventions they signed, or their constitution. He put his head like that, then he said, I'm sorry, Madam Madi, I receive how to vote by SMS. Can you imagine, but this is outside the UN, that he dared to say that he was obliged because he received by SMS how to vote. So, in fact, my recommendation to people who really care or work for some issues, they should lobby in a circle, not just UN Geneva, not just the EU, because I said the EU because we are in Europe, but as well the governments, I mean the capitals and New York, if we want really to achieve something. I still have time. Yeah. So, okay. I'm sorry, women speak a lot. And also, I want to remind you, because we bring the issue of apartheid, but in fact, the word apartheid is fake. It's wrong. It's apartheid, because it's the only apartheid outside Africa. If I want to remind you of Namibia, Rhodes, which became Zimbabwe, South Africa, it's Palestine. And hopefully, even the American organization, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, even Israeli organization, they recognize that there is a system of apartheid. Really, the Israeli practice this system, over the Palestinians. So I don't think we need them, but the international community function like that. So we are happy that at least, this American Amnesty International recognize that what's happening, the Israel is practice. So in one way, we celebrate the end of the system of apartheid in South Africa, but now there is a new system of apartheid, etc. So just in order not to bring you very far, I want just to remind you before some months where the new fascist government, in Israel, and now the European country feel bad because they are unable to defend what's called the State of Israel, which was really planted by this international community. So I want just to tell you that in 2018, what led to this fascist government, the what's called parliament, I don't believe it's parliament, the Knesset, the Israeli parliament, they adopt one article, which is now, it's became Article 1, that the State of Israel is a Jewish state. Okay, what about the 20% of the population who are Arabs, mostly Muslim, they speak language. So because we speak about genocide, and I'm happy somebody mentioned the cultural genocide, yes. So can you imagine these Palestinians, the 20% of the population in what's called the State of Israel, it's forbidden for them to mention the word Nakba, which is catastrophe, what's happened in 48. Secondly, can you imagine even the dishes, the Palestinian dishes, hummus, falafel, whatever, now it's became like Israeli dishes. I was shocked before last week. I was in Paris. In one area, I saw really a queue of people. What's that? They say, this is well-known Israeli restaurant. They say, I want to go there to see which kind of food. Then I felt bad. It's a Palestinian food. It's Middle Eastern food, But unfortunately, the Palestinian Authority, they are busy to bring money from here and there, and they are corrupted. They don't care about to register these issues. So unfortunately, now with the time being, the Israeli, they use it as their special food. As well, the well-known Palestinian female dresses, now you can see the waitress in some places in the planes, they wear it, it's like it's Israeli dresses. So you see this kind of genocide, stealing the culture. Another issue, can you imagine the children of these 20% of the population who go to schools? In which language? Of course, in Hebrew. Hopefully they speak Arabic at home. but which manual they learn? What about the history of this bloody shit Israeli, I'm sorry to say the word, about this Israeli government? So they learn the fake history. So can you imagine the role of the parents to give them another education at home? So this is why I believe that any changes will come from inside, but of course with the help of outside. And I want to remind you, just last week, 2 Palestinian prisoners, they were released, but they are not released. I don't want to say released because they spent 40 years. Just go Google. It's not from my hair. 40 years. Can you imagine 2 cousins? They spent 40 years between them 1 week. One of them, he was freed yesterday. Yeah, just yesterday. So can you imagine? And these 2 Palestinians from where? From what's called the State of Israel. So you know why I still believe. And also I want to remind you that there is more than 6,000 Palestinians who are in prison, among them 139 children under the age of 17. And also just to, if he permit me to add something, unfortunately the Israelis they tried all their best in order to silence the voices. So in November last year, they accused 6 Palestinian NGOs who have ECOSOC status in the UN. They used to come and to speak about the atrocities happened by the occupying power, in which they don't respect even the law of occupation, and they silence them and they accuse them that they are terrorist organization. They steal their computers, they lock their doors, and they start really to lobby against them. Hopefully the European Union, they give another point of view, but in fact, I know the European Union, for them, they don't want really to disturb this state of Israel, but they can't say that what's happened is correct. Yeah. So this is one of the issues, in fact, that it's very important to raise. Another issue, now with this fascist government, unfortunately, the settlers, they have free hand to go to confiscate, not just to confiscate the land, but as well to uproot the trees. Can you imagine the very old olive trees uprooted and they are planted in the colony? Can you imagine that? Even in the colony based in the occupied territory. So in fact, if I want really now to start to give you the number of violations committed by this occupying power, we will not finish until many, many years. So I'm sorry if I was long, and I'm ready if there is any question, any issue. I prepare a lot of things, but I don't want really to make it very pessimistic. So I hope that in the future, with the recommendations, we will do it together, how to lobby states, how to bring this issue, how to bring justice to the people, all the people, not just the Palestinian people. But I think if we put our hands together, if we learn from other, experiences, this is how we can really bring justice to people. Thank you very much.
Merci, Madame Rania,
De rien.
pour votre
Ouais. Vous pouvez aussi parler en français, pas de souci.
Merci beaucoup pour votre engagement. Je sais bien que votre engagement aussi dans les coulisses des Nations Unies pour sensibiliser l'opinion publique internationale de la situation palestinienne. Israël, un État d'apartheid, un régime criminel, c'est sûr et certain. Mais est-ce que nous pouvons aujourd'hui cacher la responsabilité de l'autorité palestinienne?
Non.
Autorité corrompue,
Absolument.
complotiste avec la colonisation israélienne. Aujourd'hui aussi, les forces palestiniennes sont responsables avec cette situation de division qui règne entre Gaza et Ramallah. Il ne faut jamais oublier qu'il y avait quelqu'un qui m'a dit un jour que les Arabes, ils ont tué plus des Palestiniens que les Israéliens. Il ne faut jamais oublier la liquidation des Palestiniens à Amman. Il ne faut jamais oublier la liquidation des Palestiniens en Liban.
Votre question.
Nous sommes responsables. Est-ce qu'aujourd'hui, on cache aussi la responsabilité de l'autorité palestinienne? Je pense que l'autorité palestinienne est responsable avec ce régime criminel israélien. Il ne faut jamais cacher ça, je pense.
Bon, je crois si vous avez entendu ce que j'ai dit même avec l'autorité palestinienne, parce qu'il y a la collaboration, en fait, entre l'autorité palestinienne et les Israéliens. What I said, it's there is translation. Should I translate? In fact, what I said that the Palestinian Authority was created, in fact, in order to help the Israeli, so they don't have to go always to the, let's say, what's called the Palestinian land. So they could contact the Palestinian Authority and they could give them the information. And by the way, many of the prisoners were their names given to the Israelis that they are trying or they approach the borders or etc. So of course, totally, je suis tout à fait d'accord avec vous, mais je dis ça pendant mon intervention. Je crois pas, c'est pas je crois plus, j'ai jamais croyé à cette autorité palestinienne. I never believe about this Palestinian authority because it was created by the international community. It wasn't really selected or let's say voted or chosen by the population. I prefer that in the past to be people under occupation fighting to get their freedom, not by agreement. No, the same like what's happened for Algeria. Yeah. Yes.
Je voudrais avoir votre point de vue sur la caractérisation exacte de la colonisation israélienne. Toute colonisation de peuplement mène au mieux à l'apartheid, au pire au génocide. C'est dans la définition même du peuplement. Mais la colonisation israélienne n'est pas qu'une colonisation de peuplement pour moi.
Non.
Elle est aussi, et je pense que c'est important d'insister, ici en Europe, elle est aussi une colonisation collective. Autrement dit, qui défend les intérêts pas seulement d'un État,
absolument,
mais de toute une série d'États qui dominent la planète aujourd'hui. Et c'est le drame du peuple palestinien. Et on sait, quand on prend l'exemple historique, par exemple en Afrique, les colonisations collectives comme celle du Portugal, le Portugal était le gérant des intérêts allemands, français, etc., sont celles qui ont coûté le plus cher et qui ont duré le plus longtemps. Est-ce que c'est pas ça qui caractérise d'abord la colonisation israélienne, d'être une colonisation collective au service d'autres puissances? Et c'est important de le dire ici, parce que du coup, il faut soutenir la Palestine ici, parce que c'est ici que se prennent aussi un certain nombre de décisions.
Bon, d'abord, je suis tout à fait d'accord. C'est pour ça que j'ai dit, je vais vous amener un petit peu dans l'histoire, 1948, lorsque c'était, soi-disant, on a fini avec la colonisation britannique, et c'était livré la Palestine. Mais parce qu'il y avait une promesse Belfort, en fait. Voilà. Et je dois quand même parler de l'histoire de première conférence qui était passée à Basel en Suisse, en fait, pour la création d'un État juif. C'était par Theodor Herzl. What I said, that I totally agree that the international community or the world, when they create or when they gave the right to Israel to occupy this land, they kept one eye closed, like it's okay, we leave them doing whatever they want to do. In another way, because according to some conventions, constitution, they should say, it's a shame, they should stop, etc. But in fact, they are not serious. We saw them very serious when what's happened after the ethnic cleansing, Bosnia and Herzegovina, and the war in Yugoslavia, and the Tutsi and the Hutsi. After when the massacres happened, the international community moved. So what I want to say, yes, it's a modern colonization, which the international community really, this has served them to have this government in this region. It's a very important region, not just because of really profits, but also the land is still fertile, the water. So now in the geography where the state of Israel, between brackets, they steal water from Lebanon because Lebanon is very weak. They sign another agreement with Jordan because Jordan, it's a kingdom related to Britain, and etc., etc. Iraq, which was strong, now a very weak country, as well Syria, now the war since 2011. So can you imagine? It's very important to have what's called the State of Israel. And I want to remind you, weekly, weekly, the Israeli planes, they attack Syria. Nobody say nothing. We don't hear any voice. So this is why this is a new way of colonization. This is why we should also, ourselves, we should create a new way of fighting. But now, no, here. We should fight here. Can you imagine now that I should take arm to attack? No, now it's here. We should be bright. We should be intelligent. We should educate people. We should bring the language to the new generation. This is how we could change the reality now. Okay.
Merci beaucoup, Rania. Je voudrais maintenant demander à notre prochain panéliste qui est venu de très loin, de la France, à côté, de venir et faire sa présentation, Monsieur Saïd Bouamama. Et je voudrais remercier le CRI et Monsieur Abdel-Jalil d'avoir recommandé Monsieur Bouamama. Merci beaucoup.
Bien, je vous remercie vraiment de m'avoir invité parce que je me suis régalé dans les premières interventions. En réalité, les thèmes qui ont été abordés sont des thèmes qui me travaillent depuis maintenant une quarantaine d'années. Et je vais tenter de résumer ces travaux, ces recherches que je mène depuis une quarantaine d'années sur ces questions, en soulignant d'abord que plus que jamais, il est important de se souvenir et de commémorer la mémoire des victimes des génocides, j'insiste sur le « D », parce que la réduction du terme génocide à un seul est quelque chose qui est extrêmement dangereux pour nous tous, parce qu'elle hiérarchise, elle contribue de nouveau à hiérarchiser l'humanité. Pour commémorer réellement et pour se souvenir réellement de ces victimes, il faut non pas concevoir le génocide comme étant une réalité sans cause, mais justement s'intéresser d'abord aux causes. C'est-à-dire que le génocide est toujours un résultat. Il est le résultat d'une période dans laquelle certaines populations ont été construites comme populations indésirables, dangereuses et à éradiquer. Et c'est autour de ces processus-là que je tente depuis de nombreuses années d'apporter ma contribution. Et pour cela, eh bien, il faut se poser la question de ce qu'il faut, quelles sont les conditions pour comprendre l'ensemble des enjeux liés à ces dangers de génocide de retour aujourd'hui. Je pense que comprendre notre séquence historique, ça suppose d'être très précis sur le vocabulaire, de clarifier le vocabulaire. Ça suppose de contextualiser historiquement la question du génocide. Et ça suppose, troisièmement, de comprendre ce qui bouge dans le monde et ce qui ne bouge pas. Qu'est-ce qui est invariant et qu'est-ce qui est en mutation. Alors, c'est ces questions-là que je voudrais aborder en tentant, puisqu'on m'a donné un quart d'heure, de vous résumer deux énormes travaux, des années de travaux. Un sur le processus qui consiste à construire une population en ennemi de l'intérieur d'une nation. Et l'autre qui consiste à tirer le bilan de plusieurs siècles d'immigration, de comparer les différentes immigrations pour voir en quoi elles se ressemblent, mais aussi en quoi elles diffèrent, puisque je pense qu'il y a également des différences. Alors très rapidement, puisque le premier intervenant a déjà abordé la question, quelques précisions de vocabulaire. Je voudrais insister sur le fait que l'idée répandue, qui est médiatiquement dominante, d'un racisme qui aurait toujours existé, est une idée erronée et dangereuse. Non, le racisme n'a pas toujours existé. Il ne date pas des débuts de l'humanité. Il est historiquement daté. Et on peut le dater même précisément. On peut le dater du moment où certaines sociétés ont eu le besoin de justifier une hiérarchisation de l'humanité, c'est-à-dire de 1492, quand Christophe Colomb arrive en Amérique. C'est à ce moment-là qu'apparaissent les premières théorisations d'une hiérarchisation de l'humanité en inférieur et supérieur, les supérieurs ayant donc le droit de dominer les inférieurs. Est-ce que ça veut dire qu'auparavant c'était le paradis? Bien entendu non. Il existait des formes de distinction, mais ça n'était pas du racisme au sens scientifique du terme. Il y avait l'ethnocentrisme, c'est-à-dire la préférence pour son propre groupe. Ça, c'est une réalité qui date des débuts de l'humanité, effectivement, qui date des moments où les groupes humains avaient peu d'échanges entre eux et où, effectivement, c'est autour de son propre groupe qu'on se construisait uniquement. Il y avait la xénophobie, c'est-à-dire la peur de celui que je ne connais pas. Mais ces deux réalités ne sont pas encore du racisme. Pour passer de ça au racisme, il faut affirmer qu'il y a des races. Il faut affirmer que ces races sont sur une échelle hiérarchique, de l'inférieur au supérieur. Et il faut troisièmement ajouter que certaines ont donc le droit, si ce n'est le devoir, de dominer les autres. À chaque fois qu'on vous met dans la tête, qu'on nous diffuse dans nos médias que le racisme est un mal de l'humanité depuis sa naissance, on nous empêche de comprendre comment le supprimer à l'avenir. On nous empêche de comprendre qu'il est lié à certains intérêts et que c'est donc en empêchant ces intérêts d'être dominants qu'on pourra le faire disparaître. Ça a été souligné tout à l'heure, et je n'insisterai pas là-dessus, une fois que le racisme est apparu, il a connu des âges. À quoi étaient liés ces âges? Ces âges étaient liés à leur crédibilité. Quand un âge devenait non crédible, il disparaissait et un autre âge apparaissait. Le premier âge, c'est le racisme biologique. C'est effectivement d'affirmer que la différence entre les hommes, entre les races, elle était biologique, que certains corps étaient inférieurs à d'autres, et que par conséquent, certaines sociétés qui correspondaient à ces soi-disant races avaient la légitimité pour exploiter d'autres. C'est entièrement lié à l'époque esclavagiste, puis coloniale. Mais cela va devenir impossible à tenir. Quand? Ça va devenir impossible à tenir lorsque cette théorisation, qui jusqu'à présent était appliquée à des peuples qui étaient non européens, va commencer à s'appliquer à l'Europe. Le grand apport d'un Aimé Césaire ou d'un Frantz Fanon, c'est d'avoir expliqué les liens entre l'apparition du nazisme et la colonisation. Et à chaque fois qu'on ne fait pas le lien entre les deux, on ne comprend pas comment le nazisme a pu émerger. En réalité, les génocides ont précédé le nazisme. Les camps de concentration ont précédé le nazisme. Les utilisations de la médecine, enfin des tortures de médecine à partir d'êtres humains ont été utilisées dans les colonies. Ce qu'il y a de nouveau avec le nazisme, c'est que pour la première fois, ce sont des blancs qui appliquent la colonisation à d'autres blancs. Et ça va rendre non crédible le racisme biologique. Est-ce que ça va faire disparaître le racisme? Non. Il va s'adapter. Et il va devenir un racisme culturaliste. Frantz Fanon le date de 1945. En gros, il dit, avec la défaite du nazisme, le racisme biologique n'est plus défendable. Et donc le racisme s'adapte, change de visage pour se maintenir. Je le disais tout à l'heure, je pense que nous sommes dans une troisième période. Je pense que les enjeux géostratégiques mondiaux aujourd'hui, la peur des États-Unis de perdre leur hégémonie mondiale, la peur de la montée d'un certain nombre d'économies émergentes aujourd'hui, font qu'a émergé cette théorisation sur le choc des civilisations avec Samuel Huntington. Si vous regardez de très près ce que dit Samuel Huntington, quasiment toutes les autres civilisations sont inférieures à la civilisation occidentale et sont présentées comme ennemis. On nous présente un ennemi confucéen, la Chine, et on voit bien les contradictions avec la Chine. On nous présente un ennemi orthodoxe, et on voit bien la guerre en Ukraine et effectivement ce qui se joue là-dessus. Et on nous présente un ennemi musulman, arabo-musulman, et on voit bien la guerre d'Irak, la guerre de Syrie, etc. Autrement dit, je pense que nous sommes à un troisième âge du racisme, qui est un racisme qui se base sur l'affirmation non plus de l'existence de race, mais de l'existence de civilisations qui seraient hiérarchisées, certaines étant considérées comme compatibles avec les droits de l'homme et d'autres non, certaines étant considérées comme compatibles avec la démocratie et d'autres non, certaines étant considérées comme compatibles avec le droit des femmes et d'autres non. Bref, on retrouve la hiérarchisation aussi caricaturale que celle du racisme biologique, mais argumentée avec des arguments contemporains, avec des arguments qui font écho à des dimensions de modernisme. La seconde dimension sur laquelle je voudrais insister, c'est les mécanismes qui précèdent l'arrivée d'un génocide. Je voudrais en citer 3 qui me semblent essentiels. D'abord, la transformation d'une population par une lecture culturaliste de ses comportements. C'est-à-dire expliquer tous les comportements d'un groupe humain uniquement par sa culture. Autrement dit, même quand vous conduisez votre enfant à l'école, on va dire qu'il y a une manière musulmane de conduire son enfant à l'école. Même quand vous allez travailler pour gagner un salaire pour nourrir votre famille, on va dire qu'il y a une manière musulmane d'aller travailler. C'est-à-dire cette idée que la personne n'est pas un père de famille ou une mère de famille, n'est pas un consommateur, n'est pas un travailleur, et de le réduire à une dimension, qui est cette dimension culturelle. À chaque fois qu'il y a eu un génocide, les populations antérieurement ont été transformées de cette manière-là. La seconde, alors qu'est-ce que c'est que le culturalisme? Quand j'ai dit construction culturaliste, le culturalisme, ça veut dire homogénéiser toute une population. Donc, à chaque fois que vous entendez tous les musulmans, ou les musulmans, ou tous les Sikhs, ou à chaque fois qu'une population est homogénéisée, mais chez les musulmans comme chez les Sikhs, etc., il y a une diversité. Il y a des musulmans de gauche, des musulmans de droite, des musulmans. Cette diversité-là, elle est réduite par l'approche culturaliste pour justement justifier qu'elle peut constituer un danger. Secondo, le culturalisme, ça suppose d'enlever l'histoire. Autrement dit, ces populations ne s'adaptent pas à l'histoire. Ça vous rappelle le discours d'un certain Sarkozy qui allait à Dakar dire que l'Africain n'était pas rentré dans l'histoire. C'est la vieille théorie colonisatrice. Il y aurait des peuples entrés dans l'histoire et d'autres qui ne seraient pas entrés dans l'histoire. Eh bien, cette dimension-là, ça n'est qu'une application. En réalité, tous les génocides ont été précédés d'un moment où on a considéré qu'une population n'était pas doté de la dynamique historique. Donc on va considérer que le musulman de 2023 fonctionne exactement de la même manière comme le musulman du 7e siècle. On va considérer que le musulman d'Iran fonctionne exactement de la même manière que le musulman de Paris. Et donc c'est une nouvelle manière de réduire. Comme on l'a fait avant le génocide des Juifs, dans les années 30 pour les Juifs, on a le même processus qui se met en place aujourd'hui. Et puis troisième dimension du culturalisme, on va nier les interactions entre les comportements d'un groupe et les autres groupes. Or, toute une partie des comportements viennent de la manière dont ce groupe est regardé et traité. Si vous êtes sans cesse harcelé, ça va déterminer une partie de vos réactions. Et le culturalisme va le ramener à vous-même alors que c'est déjà un résultat de votre réaction. Ça, c'est le premier processus qui précède tous les génocides. Si vous regardez les génocides des Arméniens, on a eu cette construction-là, où les Arméniens ont été présentés comme fondamentalement différents des autres Turcs. Donc on les a réduits à une culture de l'altérité. Seconde dimension second mécanisme, l'inversion des causes et conséquences. Autrement dit, lorsque un comportement va conduire, par exemple, une communauté à se regrouper au même endroit, justement pour se défendre, ou parce qu'on la rejette ailleurs, ou parce qu'elle ne trouve pas à se loger ailleurs, parce qu'il y a des mécanismes de rejet, on va en conclure, regardez, ils aiment bien rester entre eux. Et donc la conséquence est présentée comme une cause, il y a inversion des causes et conséquences. Les fameux ghettos juifs étaient présentés comme un choix des juifs. Les ghettos juifs étaient les résultats de l'ostracisme qui était vécu par les juifs, et pourtant c'était présenté. Eh bien on revit la même chose aujourd'hui, bien entendu pas encore avec la même ampleur, et ça dépendra de nous on n'en arrive pas là, mais en tout cas moi qui viens de France, je peux vous dire qu'en France parfois, on se demande vraiment si on n'est pas en train de retrouver cette même dynamique-là, cette fois-ci vis-à-vis des musulmans. Et puis troisième mécanisme, la construction de l'autre comme danger et ennemi. Le racisme ne passe pas forcément ce cap-là, mais quand il passe ce cap-là, eh bien il y a une alerte rouge pour nous, parce que tous les génocides ont été précédés par la construction de l'autre comme étant un danger, comme étant un ennemi de l'intérieur qu'il faut éradiquer. Et à chaque fois et ça permet d'expliquer la différence entre certaines immigrations et d'autres. Tout toutes les immigrations en Europe ont été victimes du racisme, toutes. C'est pour cela qu'il faut vraiment se méfier du discours sur « Ah, les Italiens, c'était bien, ils se sont bien intégrés, c'était la preuve que c'était une bonne immigration. » C'est une méconnaissance de l'histoire. Si vous regardez l'histoire des Italiens, vous allez, en Suisse ou en France, voir l'ampleur du racisme qu'il y avait. Donc il y a un aspect commun. Même parfois, la violence a été, en tout cas pour la France, a été pire. Par exemple, les Italiens ont été l'objet d'une chasse à l'homme pendant 8 jours à Aigues-Mortes, donc une ville française dans laquelle on a chassé l'Italien. On n'a pas vu ça aujourd'hui, et je touche du bois qu'on ne le voit pas en France pour les musulmans, pour les Noirs ou pour d'autres. Donc, parfois, ça a été plus violent. Est-ce que ça veut dire que le racisme vécu aujourd'hui est le même? Non, non. Le racisme vécu aujourd'hui n'est pas le même. Il y a ces aspects communs, mais il y a d'autres aspects particuliers qui sont, d'après moi, liés au fait que les immigrations d'aujourd'hui sont des immigrations qui viennent des anciennes colonies. Qui viennent des anciennes colonies et qui sont regardées comme encore inférieures. Et une des différences fondamentales, c'est laquelle? C'est que pour les immigrations antérieures, italiennes, polonaises, espagnoles, etc., le racisme s'est arrêté aux parents. C'est la première génération qui a été victime du racisme. Les enfants d'Italiens ont été regardés comme des Français ou des Suisses. Les enfants d'Espagnols ont été regardés comme des Français ou des Suisses. Les enfants d'Algériens, de Tunisiens, etc., sont encore regardés comme des étrangers, sont encore perçus comme une altérité, ne sont pas considérés comme de l'intérieur de la nation. Et ça, c'est quelque chose d'extrêmement dangereux parce que ça construit cette dimension de dangerosité et donc ça peut conduire à cette idée d'un ennemi de l'intérieur qu'il faudrait combattre. En réalité, à chaque fois qu'on passe d'une méfiance, d'un racisme contre quelqu'un d'étranger à un racisme sur l'identité, alors tous les racismes sont à combattre, mais quand on passe en plus à l'idée que c'est l'identité qu'il faut pourchasser, puisque là, les gens, Fatima, elle a la nationalité suisse, Mohamed, il a la nationalité française, mais ils sont encore regardés comme étrangers. Quand on passe de la nationalité à l'identité, ça veut dire qu'on n'est pas loin de cette idée d'une population à éradiquer. Donc je pense qu'on est aujourd'hui dans une période particulière qui est une période, de danger extrêmement important. Alors, dernier point sur lequel je voudrais insister, c'est les facteurs de reproduction. Parce que ce qui nous intéresse en réalité, c'est comment on va combattre tout cela. Les facteurs de reproduction, je voudrais en citer 3 qui me semblent essentiels. Le premier, c'est, et qui sont des indices de l'aggravation de la situation. Le premier, c'est lorsqu'une population devient bouc émissaire, c'est-à-dire lorsqu'elle est utilisée médiatiquement et surtout politiquement, c'est-à-dire au moment d'échéance électorale, pour constituer la centralité du débat politique. Si vous écoutez les élections en France, en tout cas, vous avez l'impression qu'il n'y a plus de problème économique, qu'il n'y a plus de problème de logement, qu'il n'y a plus de problème d'insécurité. Il n'existe qu'un seul problème, les musulmans et la laïcité. Autrement dit, à chaque fois qu'une population est construite comme centralité politique, eh bien, ça veut dire qu'il y a un processus en cours qu'il faut faire extrêmement attention. Pourquoi ? Parce que quand une population devient bouc émissaire, quand elle prend cette fonction-là de centralité politique, eh bien, de nombreux partis, et pas seulement les racistes ouverts, ont intérêt à utiliser cela pour masquer les questions qu'ils ne veulent pas qu'ils se posent. Par exemple, on a eu des gouvernements de gauche qui ont utilisé la peur du foulard, présenter le foulard comme un danger, pour masquer une réforme des retraites par peur du refus de cette réforme de retraite, pour masquer une grève étudiante, par peur, une grève enseignante, par peur de cette contestation. Donc à chaque fois qu'une population est instrumentalisable pour cacher des questions sociales, c'est qu'elle est déjà devenue bouc émissaire. La seconde dimension inquiétante, c'est les moments historiques. Le passage au génocide a toujours été lié à des séquences historiques de paupérisation. C'est-à-dire des moments où une partie de la population devenait très pauvre et pouvait donc avoir l'impression que sa pauvreté ne venait pas du système social ou économique, mais d'une population précise, d'un groupe précis, d'une communauté précise. Le repli sur l'identité, la peur de perdre son identité qu'on entend en France aujourd'hui avec les théories du grand remplacement, avec les théories de l'islam, danger pour la laïcité, etc. Cette focalisation autour de l'identité est en fait, l'arôme qui reste à des populations qui sont paupérisées. Et c'est extrêmement grave parce qu'on a vécu ça avant l'arrivée du nazisme, on a vécu ça à chaque fois qu'il y a eu un génocide. Et puis, troisième dimension, l'entrée dans les médias. L'entrée dans les médias. Lorsqu'une partie des médias se fait le relais des discours sur l'identité, des discours sur un groupe social en danger, etc. Or là, on a quelque chose de nouveau qui apparaît. Je ne sais pas en Suisse, je ne connais pas le paysage audiovisuel suisse, mais je peux vous dire pour la France, ben c'est très clair qu'un certain nombre de chaînes qui ont été financées par des gens très riches sont des chaînes qui sont basées là-dessus, qui recherchent l'audimat en entretenant ces dimensions-là. On a vécu exactement la même chose lors des génocides précédents. Alors, on est obligé de conclure que nous sommes dans une période particulière, qui est une période de tous les dangers, où se réunissent un certain nombre de conditions de possibilité du génocide. Comment réagir à cela? En cultivant du commun, donc en multipliant les dimensions communes, en développant tous les outils, et c'est ce que vous faites ce soir, tous les outils possibles d'explication, c'est-à-dire permettre aux personnes de penser autrement la réalité que celle qu'il aurait offert médiatiquement, en multipliant les dimensions d'espace collectif. C'est aussi l'isolement face aux difficultés qui fait qu'on peut écouter ce type de discours, et donc on a besoin d'espace collectif, et surtout, ne jamais banaliser la situation. La chose est devenue réellement sérieuse. Nous ne sommes pas dans un débat abstrait, mais dans de vrais dangers, y compris ici en Europe. Merci.
Merci beaucoup, Saïd. Maintenant, on va aller vers les questions et réponses. On va prendre 2 questions, 5 minutes. Encore une fois, je voudrais vous demander de garder vos questions vraiment brèves, s'il vous plaît. Est-ce qu'il y a des questions?
Merci beaucoup. Surtout, je voulais remercier Jawad aussi pour d'avoir amené un tel panel. Ma question, c'est à quel point, d'après vous, est-ce que nous sommes dans une situation très différente de celle qu'on avait au XVIIIe siècle, où, comme a montré Dru, tous les gens que moi j'appellerais en anglais embedded journalism, hein? C'est-à-dire des gens de médias comme Hume, comme Hegel, comme Marx. Tous ces gens étaient en train déjà de parler de la différence entre les Blancs et les autres. Si je peux me permettre d'être aussi clair que ça. Merci beaucoup.
Je réponds. Oui, je pense que vous soulignez quelque chose d'essentiel. Une des raisons de l'invariance, de ce qui ne bouge pas, il y a plein de choses qui ont bougé, mais une des choses qui ne bouge pas, c'est la référence à cette pensée dont vous parlez, la pensée des Lumières, la fameuse pensée des Lumières. Que nous dit cette pensée des Lumières? Tout n'est pas ajouté dans la pensée des Lumières. Il y a cette idée que l'individu, dès sa naissance, est porteur de droits. Mais au même moment où on invente ça, on considère que tous les hommes n'ont pas égal accès à cela. C'est-à-dire que c'est le même mouvement qui invente la dynamique démocratique et l'idée que certains peuples n'ont pas le niveau pour y accéder. On comprend bien que cette pensée des Lumières, si elle n'est pas, s'il n'y a pas un tri à l'intérieur, s'il n'y a pas un questionnement critique et une réélaboration, on pourra faire tout ce qu'on veut comme évolution. En réalité, on continuera à regarder l'autre comme étant quelqu'un qui n'est pas capable par son propre mouvement, par sa propre dynamique de progresser, etc. Que vous le vouliez ou non, ça conduit à revenir à la mission civilisatrice, à l'idée que certains doivent civiliser d'autres. Et donc je pense que tant qu'on ne sera pas revenu philosophiquement à un questionnement critique de cela, eh bien on n'avancera pas. Or, là on en est loin. Hein. On en est loin. Le débat sur le foulard en France a montré la ligne de défense, en gros, de ceux qui sont les plus agressifs. C'est de dire, nous on a inventé les Lumières, et ces jeunes filles avec le foulard menacent les Lumières. Donc on voit bien que vous avez raison, il y a un nœud là qui ne partira que s'il est critiqué. Donc il ne faut pas faire de cadeaux là-dessus.
Bon, je vous remercie énormément, mais j'ai juste une question. Si vous étiez d'accord entre la différence entre la colonisation française et britannique. Moi, je vois la colonisation française, c'est plutôt culturel, missionnaire, culturel comme l'Algérie, interdit de parler la langue. Le Liban, c'est des missionnaires jésuites. Et par contre, la colonisation britannique, c'est stratégie pour le commerce. Je ne vais pas citer d'autres exemples. Est-ce que vous êtes d'accord ou non?
Toutes les colonisations sont exécrables, toutes. Il n'y a aucune colonisation jusqu'à aujourd'hui qui peut être considérée comme avoir apporté même un iota au peuple. C'est important de le dire avant d'entrer dans le détail. Après, il y a eu au moins 3 types de colonisation. Il y a eu des colonisations qui étaient basées uniquement sur l'exploitation. Et vous avez raison, c'est la colonisation britannique. Les Britanniques n'avaient pas comme projet de changer la culture des gens, de les convertir à une autre religion, d'éradiquer complètement leur mode d'organisation politique. Et ce qui a amené d'ailleurs à s'appuyer sur les formes d'organisation qu'il y avait auparavant, etc. Donc il y a eu cette première forme de colonisation. La colonisation française, elle est venue être une colonisation d'exploitation, mais en plus apporter cette idée qu'ils étaient porteurs d'une culture qui était bon pour les indigènes, même s'il fallait leur imposer par la force. On va faire leur bonheur malgré eux. Et on va faire leur bonheur en leur tapant dessus. Et donc ça passe par l'éradiction de toutes les assises civilisationnelles des peuples colonisés. La colonisation française, il faut le rappeler, avait des dimensions, quand même, en France. On prétend avoir inventé la laïcité, comme si la laïcité n'avait pas été inventée. Moi, je viens d'un pays où dans chaque village, il y a un imam et un amin. Là, il y a un amin qui est chargé des questions politiques et un imam qui est chargé de l'aspect religieux. Et on vient nous dire, nous sommes les seuls à avoir inventé la laïcité. Vous avez inventé le mot laïcité, mais ne dites pas que vous êtes les seuls à avoir inventé la laïcité. Toutes les sociétés du monde ont eu à gérer cette dimension-là et donc ont inventé des choses qu'elles n'ont pas appelées laïcité, mais qui sont des formes de cohabitation du politique et du religieux. Et donc, ça c'est la seconde forme de colonisation. La troisième forme de colonisation, c'est celle, la colonisation de peuplement, qui n'a pas concerné toutes les colonies françaises, mais qui a concerné l'Algérie. On sait aujourd'hui qu'il y avait un projet de génocide du peuple algérien et que l'image de la colonisation de l'Australie ou des USA était débattue au sein des gouvernements qui ont colonisé à l'époque. Donc on voit bien qu'il y a ces 3 formes de colonisation. Mais vous avez raison, une des différences, c'est que la France, en plus de l'exploitation, voulait la transformation des cultures.
Merci beaucoup, Saïd. We're going to end here. Before finishing the conference, I would like to thank once again the panelists for accepting the invitation to speak in this event. And I would like to thank the partner organizations, FICA, for allowing us to have this conference here in their premises and to use their facilities. Once again, je voudrais remercier Monsieur Abdeljalil et le CRI pour avoir voulu être en partenariat avec nous pour cet événement. Je voudrais remercier le venu de président et fondateur du Cercle de réflexion des Nations, secrétaire général du Synode européen développement, formation, culture, Monsieur Michel Tao, pour être venu ici dans notre conférence. Et puis, and then I would like to thank, in addition, the Decolonial International Network, the Law for Palestine, World Sikh Parliament, et puis le Front Uni des Immigrations et des Quartiers Populaires, FUIQP, pour leur partenariat avec le IHRC pour cet événement. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much for your participation.
Okay. Thank you so much. I can take this one.
Yeah, this one's on.
Okay. Just to balance the communication of today, I will speak in French. But with very few key words. En fait, je suis venu en tant que religieux, mais d'une religieux qui cherche la vérité. Le Chador, ça vient de mon maître védantique, le dernier disciple de Holy Mothers, et je bénéficie de ça. Ça vient de Mahayana bouddhisme. C'est le maître de Taïwan qui m'a élevé. Et puis, il y a également le maître des moines des forêts qui m'a fait bénéficier de tout ça. Mais mon esprit, c'est un esprit qui est éduqué en Europe et qui est éduqué dans les affaires en Europe, avec un PhD en biology, un PhD en physics science, vibration, un MBA and DBA in finance, and a doctor of metaphysical science and psychology. Voilà, avec tout ça, je voudrais juste dire quelques mots concernant le sujet qui est extrêmement important aujourd'hui. En résumé de tout ce que j'avais passé au sein de l'ONU, avec la création de deux doctorats. Le premier, c'est PhD of International Governance and Sustainable Development. Et le deuxième, c'est Doctorate of Peace Administration, not Business Administration, Peace Administration, parce qu'on ne sait pas gérer la paix. Et avec ça, je peux conclure en une phrase, c'est que la politique est provisoire, la science est transitoire et la religion, dans le sens croyance, la foi est quelque chose d'autre qui est permanent. Mais c'est basé sur ça. C'est basé sur notre croyance, notre dévotion, notre façon d'aborder les problèmes du monde. Et c'est là où on a créé nous-mêmes, sans savoir, les guerres et également tous les génocides. Comment s'en sortir? On est dans une période où, à côté de ces religions, il y a une autre religion dont nous sommes tous adhérents. C'est la croyance de 8 milliards de personnes au pouvoir de domination et à l'argent. Nous sommes tous dedans et que j'appelle aujourd'hui ce qu'on appelle l'humanité programmée. Nous avons tous participé à une programmation basée sur quoi? Sur l'argent et la paix, donc qui sont dominés par les forces aujourd'hui des grands pouvoirs. Comment s'en sortir? Et avant de venir ici, j'ai fait la synthèse un peu de tous les génocides dans le monde. Et les génocides ont commencé depuis 3000 ans avant Jésus-Christ, avec toutes les causes et les effets que nous avons abordés, que beaucoup de conférenciers ont abordés. Mais ils ont un point en commun, c'est faire partie de ce qu'on appelle l'humanité programmée. Nous sommes dedans. Moi, j'avais travaillé pendant une trentaine d'années pour faire la paix, puisque c'est le cercle de réflexion des nations que de travailler la paix. Et je me rends compte d'une chose, c'est qu'en travaillant sur la paix, en essayant de bâtir la paix, je fais la guerre contre ceux qui font la guerre. Mais je suis rentré à l'intérieur de cet objet-là. Et maintenant, comment s'en sortir? J'ai travaillé beaucoup sur un seul génocide qui est au Cambodge. 2 millions sur 6 millions, un tiers. Un Cambodgien sur 3 est dans le génocide. Mais l'idée, pendant des années, que j'essaie de comprendre, c'est il y a le génocide, il y a les résultats, il y a des conséquences. Mais quelle est la cause réelle? La cause réelle de ça? On parle beaucoup de causes réelles au niveau politique, géoéconomique, etc. Mais il y a une autre cause qu'on néglige. Je suis allé pendant des années pour chercher quelle est la cause. Et je suis tombé sur un vieux moine qui m'a dit, qui m'a raconté l'histoire suivante. Vous savez, le Tonlé Sap, le lac qui est le plus poissonneux dans le monde. Et les Cambodgiens ont tellement exploité qu'il y a moins de poissons. Et il y a un excès d'abus tellement qu'il y a, chez les poissons, ou dans la nature, on a trop abusé et il y a une revanche. Et certains qui croient à l'incarnation disent, mais c'est l'esprit et l'âme des poissons qui sont incarnés dans les jeunes Khmers rouges et ils sont affolés et ils sont nourris par cette haine, par cette injustice. Et le moindre étincelle qui était provoquée par l'humanité programmée déclenche cet génocide. Donc, pour moi, aujourd'hui, c'est tout l'environnement qu'on a créé, qu'on essaye de sortir du génocide. Mais on était alimenté dans l'esprit, de cet esprit de l'argent, de domination. On est en quelque sorte nourri par cet esprit-là. Comment peut-on s'en sortir? Voilà le vrai problème de ça. Et en conclusion, j'ai que 2 conclusions à faire. La première, c'est aujourd'hui, il y a un changement. Un changement dans quoi? Que tous les peuples, que nous tous, sont conscients de quelque chose qui doit traverser, qui doit passer. Donc le mot conscience, qui est important, c'est le mot clé. Et puis de conscience de quoi? Conscience qu'il faut changer et ce phénomène ne peut pas passer. Il faut changer. Donc 2 conclusions. J'attends une nouvelle. Ce changement au niveau du pouvoir de l'argent qui permet de changer beaucoup de choses. Le jour où le BRIC fabrique une monnaie différente du dollar, cela va changer notre façon de voir. Cela permet à des peuples de pouvoir changer. Ça, c'est la première chose que je regarde et ça va permettre de nourrir un autre esprit que un esprit de domination totale. La deuxième chose, c'est pour pouvoir sortir de cela, déjà chacun de nous doit être conscient comment bien vivre ensemble, bien vivre avec l'autre. Ben, pour bien vivre avec l'autre, je crois qu'il faut qu'on soit conscient d'une chose. On soit conscient que comment on fait tous les jours et on continue tous les jours. Et cela va répandre d'une façon, ce qu'on appelle un peu la lumière qui jette sur une personne, ça jettera sur d'autres personnes et tous les peuples qui peuvent être ça. Et pour être conscient de ça, je crois c'est le comportement de tous les jours qu'on doit le faire. Et dans cette communion de cette lumière, le salut est extrêmement important. Le salut, c'est-à-dire notre attitude envers l'autre. Quand vous voyez quelqu'un, au lieu de serrer les mains comme habitude, vous prenez un peu plus de temps pour vous apaiser à l'intérieur, non pas une réaction, mais agir. Agir avec votre cœur un peu plus paisible. Non pas réagir, mais agir. Vous serrez les mains. Pour les musulmans, ils ont un salut formidable qui est la main sur le cœur. Moi, j'ai appris et j'ai pratiqué de cette façon-là, c'est mettre la main avec l'image de Allah pour mettre dessus. Pourquoi? Parce que je mettrai un peu plus de temps pour consacrer à analyser moi-même, apaiser, et puis de mettre également l'image de Allah, l'image de Dieu, et avec une seconde de plus, une minute de plus, je regarde mon cœur avant de parler avec l'autre dans la paix. Ça, c'est un échange énorme. Et si tous les musulmans font ça, je crois qu'on a augmenté une conscience de cette lumière-là qui a jailli directement. Pour les bouddhistes, c'est pareil. On serre les mains, mais prend un peu plus de temps pour saluer le Bouddha devant nous. C'est-à-dire, regarder le Bouddha à l'intérieur de nous. Et puis pour discuter. On appelle Dieu de l'extérieur, on appelle le soi intime de l'intérieur. Prenez un peu plus de temps. Prenez un peu plus de temps pour recevoir cette lumière qui a fabriqué à l'intérieur de vous pour dire bonjour à l'autre. Voilà les deux choses que je voudrais partager avec vous sur ça. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup.